Welcome to The Simple Sophisticate, where in 2014, this podcast premiered. And now in its 11th season, the show continues to focus on the same principles it was founded upon: the art of living a life of quality over quantity. Topics range from creating an everyday life you love living, strengthening mindfulness practices, building a capsule wardrobe, preparing seasonally delicious meals, traveling and exploring France and Britain, and living life to the fullest without breaking the bank, because living well really is quite simple. I'm your host, Shannon Ables, and whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, en route, or returning from that dream destination, or sitting down with a hot cuppa or a cafe au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to the 394th episode of The Simple Sophisticate, and welcome to the last new episode of this year. Yep, we are concluding 2024 with an episode that's going to prepare us well for starting 2025 and any new year well and soundly grounded in a foundation that will bring to life what we maybe have dreamed about, hoped about, or have tried to figure out how to bring to fruition, but haven't done it yet. So first of all, thank you for joining me. I am really looking forward to exploring this topic with you because it's going to involve a lot of different topics we've talked about over the years, and at the same time, kind of take the pressure off. You don't have to get it done in a year. You don't have to get it done next week. And you definitely don't have to get it done in a year. And we're not necessarily talking about resolutions, because as we've addressed on the blog many times over the years, at the Simply Luxurious Life, resolutions, the idea is a good one. The concept, this desire or willingness to try to improve or grow or change or step into who we fully are is a grand one and an admirable one. But sometimes it's not approached in a way that will ensure success, whatever that success for you may be. So that's why I'm looking forward to sharing with you this episode, because as I realize, we really don't have a lot of episodes talking about starting the new year off well. We have a lot of posts, and I've included those posts on the show notes for this episode. So just visit the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast 394, and you can find about 3 or 4 of those, the favorites of readers and listeners from the archives. I've included those if you're looking for some inspiration, some ideas to begin the new year well. Okay, before I dive into our topic today, I want to just give a hint as to what the Petite Plaisir is. It's a book, it's a novel, it's one I whizzed through in a weekend, and I think you are going to thoroughly enjoy it for all sorts of reasons, and I'll explain in detail what those are at the end of this episode. But to start off with, it's just great writing, number one. Number two, it's lighthearted, but at the same time thought-provoking. There's a good balance there, and it's set in England, in the countryside. So that's always fun. If you're an Anglophile, I guess I should say. If you're an Anglophile, or if you love outdoors, but at the same time, if you are looking for something different with regards to telling a traditional story, I think you're going to like this one. Anyway, I'll talk to you about that and share my review at the end of this episode. So let's chat about our topic today: setting the foundation for an extraordinary new year and beyond. So it was when I sat down and read a book that was published a couple years ago called The Long Game by Doris Clark that prompted me to bring this episode to you. Not all the quotes I share with you today will come from that book, but most of them will. And so I want to begin with a quote from it. Here we go. Quote, "We can attain almost anything we want, but not instantly. If we're methodical, if we're persistent, and if we take small, deliberate steps, we can arrive there. The going may be slow at first, but the advantage of those actions compounded over time can lead to stunning results." And this is from the book written by Doris Clark titled The Long Game: How to Be a Better Long-Term Thinker in a Short-Term World. So whether it's 5 years, 7 years, a decade, time is on our side as long as we put in the proper foundation to support the progress that will eventually lead to the outcome we intend. So here's another quote to ponder. The whole point of playing the long game is understanding the ridiculous goals are only ridiculous now, but not forever. It might take 5 years or 10 or 20, but that time will pass away, end quote. And that's partly why I wanted to title today's episode, Setting the Foundation for an Extraordinary New Year and Beyond. Because what we set into motion, if it's brand new, if we're just starting out today, may not, likely will not materialize in a year's time. I'll share with you some examples from my own life, but as we talk about this concept throughout the episode today, but when we put a very short time frame on something that has to happen, we actually are not helping ourselves out. We're getting in our own way, unknowingly, unconsciously, not intentionally. All right. So that's why we're talking about this through the lens of beyond and just beginning well, setting that foundation. So just as each season has a purpose to enable Mother Nature's flora and fauna to rest, rejuvenate, grow, shine, and celebrate, so too is the journey our own progress must traverse in order to experience the outcomes we seek. Winter finds us resting, assessing, nourishing, and gaining clarity with the pause. But that doesn't mean that we remain there. So long as we understand the purpose for the length of time it will take, then we can rest in quiet confidence that we are heading in the direction that will lead us eventually where we have pointed ourselves. Every day will not be winter. And in knowing that, we can then savor winter's opportunity, which is why I would like to bring today's episode to you as we are now just 3 days away, in the Northern Hemisphere that is, from winter's beginning. The opportunity to know what components a solid foundation contains will ensure that down the road, in an everyday, ordinary moment to others, we will eventually experience the extraordinary that in previous days we had dreamed madly about would be our reality. So let's take a look at the 6 components of the foundation for cultivating an extraordinary year and beyond. Number 1, envision your ideal lifestyle. Here's a quote from another author, Corey Allen, who wrote the book this past year titled Brave New You. He writes, "The more you can live the life that feels right instead of the one you feel is expected from you, the happier you'll be," end quote. By envisioning your ideal lifestyle, you must be as concrete as possible in certain areas, such as you want to maybe, for example, live in a home that is yours and has an affordable mortgage so you can have peace of mind no matter what the economic upturns or downturns are. But it also might involve some conceptual, because this is where we have to let go a little bit. We can't be so controlled. We have to be open to the magic. So, for example, we might say, I want to feel an abiding contentment in my everydays. So it's a balance of both, and there's not a specific percentage of what each of those will be, because each of us are different with regards to what our ideal lifestyle will be. This will take time to write out, to create this vision. Don't just have it in your mind's eye, write it down. And I say envision it because I want you to be able to see it. So I want you to put it on paper, whether it's in words or picture form. Write out how you want to live, where you want to live. If it helps during this upcoming week that we call the between the years or the week between the years, this is where you can have some time, hopefully, to create a vision journal. Maybe it contains cutout images of your ideal lifestyle. I still have one. I still have the one I refer to still that I made back in 2010. It's 15 years old and only a few things are slightly tweaked. The rest are exactly what I'm still striving for, and many of those things have been attained, which to my 2010 self would have amazed and absolutely surprised me. But at the same time, you put it down, you keep checking in with it. And for me as a visual learner, and everyone's different, so this is where you have to know yourself, when you write it down and keep referring to it, it keeps you on track, it keeps you focused, it reminds you what brings you to life. So by taking the time to create this vision journal, vision board, whatever you want to do, written in words or pictorial form, it helps to keep us focused. So I encourage you to become very clear. That's the first step. Become very clear about what your ideal lifestyle is. And I've talked in a previous episode and in a previous post about what that whole week is about, that week between the years, or the week or between the years concept. You can visit or listen to episode 297, as well as read the post, How I Spend the Time That Is Between the Years. And that one was written in 2019. The podcast episode was 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So I've included links to those. But that is a great time to become very clear or fine tune, because I will revisit my vision journal. For me, it's a journal. Whenever I need to just check in, when I feel maybe just, what was it? Am I really doing it? Maybe it's a really stressful period or during the project's progression. And I'm like, is this stress worth it? Or maybe I'm, wanting to just confirm. Yeah, keep going. You don't have to put more on your plate. You're doing all right. Just keep doing it well and progressing. Or maybe I need a boost. Maybe, things aren't doing so well. And I just need to be reminded of, number one, what I set out to create or accomplish, and reminded of the progress I've made. So that's the first step. Envision your ideal lifestyle. Number two, prioritize white space regularly in your days, weeks, and months as we move forward into this new year. So another way of describing this time of white space is what Doris Clark in the book Long Game calls oasis time, a time that is entirely free of demands, quote, a small break and the ability to rest, end quote. If you haven't established regular oasis moments in your routine, make it a priority to make space for them. Clark shares the guiding question to ask yourself, quote, what must I do to make this happen, end quote. Essentially, you have to start becoming clear about your priorities, smarter and more efficient about how you work, and courageous enough to say no even to things that aren't horrible or aren't entirely unhelpful, but they simply don't support your priorities as you now have decided upon will be your focus. Having an oasis time in your week, in your day, in your month creates space to just be rather than do or to think. Andy Petite reminds, quote, it is the silence that provides the clarity and the precision. Creativity arises from stillness, and when there's too many thoughts in our mind, that creates confusion. It's actually the silence around those thoughts that creates the clarity, that creates the focus, end quote. So perhaps you're listening to this episode and you're saying, but I don't know what my priorities are at the moment. And I would say that's even more telling that you need white space regularly in your life. So that, to refer back to Petit's quote, you have the space around your thoughts to make sense of what it is you care about, of what it is that brings you to life, of what it is that drains you, and you need to figure out how do I move away from that? It might take time. It might need adjustment, not entirely getting rid of it. What skills do I need to move me forward? But if you don't have any white space, it's going to be very hard to become clear about your priorities. Some examples of this oasis time. One from my own life. In the middle of my work week, I have a day that's entirely the morning, just the morning, but it's entirely the morning, and it's every single week, where I go walk my dogs, and then I go directly to yoga class. In the summertime, I then go to the market, and then I come home, shower, have lunch, and then I step back into my day. But that middle of the week, not on the weekend, so it's a little more, it's less stressful as far as there's not this expectation and everyone's out and about. It's in the middle of the week. And I know not everyone can do that because I know not everyone works for themselves. But when you are able to find oases regularly that enable you to have just as a strong of a latter half of the week as a first half of the week, this is to your benefit. It's to your client's benefit. It's to whoever you work with or work for's benefit. I, for example, on that day, I'm working on the newsletter, so I come refreshed to the weekly newsletter. And the next day is this and that day that I get to create, and I have so much energy and so many ideas have been percolating. So I have the energy paired with the ideas to bring it to life. Another example in a monthly setting might be this is where you take yourself to a favorite self-care ritual. And it is just for you. You might be engaging with other people, or you might be doing this entirely on your own. All right. Another example they talk about in the book is if you, for example, work for yourself, is how long can I take off before basically the money I need to survive to pay all the bills runs out? In other words, how much time away from the work can I do? This might be the holiday you take once a year, for example. But this is oasis time because you are restoring yourself, especially this time of year. A lot of us are taking our holiday. And it's so important that we do that. So this might be a taste of what that oasis time does for you, and to not just do it once a year, do it regularly. I highly recommend doing it at least weekly, and of course monthly is fantastic. And make it something different than the weekly. Make it something entirely different. But then the daily need not be long. But for me, it's my afternoon tea break. I love that break. It's different, every day as far as where I'm sitting, what I'm sipping, what I'm nibbling on. If I'm nibbling on something, usually I am. Yes, it's fun to nibble on something. But it's that carrot, and it's a time where you are not required to do anything, just be. Okay. So prioritize white space as a regular feature in your routine. 3, audit your bank of knowledge and pinpoint an area to strengthen. So once you have your priorities, so we've made it through 1 and 2, and you've created the white space to find time to understand what your priorities are, to become clear about your priorities. Once you have your priorities and ideal lifestyle clarified, examine what skills you need to be successful in reaching this outcome. If you aren't currently living your ideal lifestyle, it is understood that something still needs to be learned and put into practice. This is not something to berate yourself over. We want to always be growing and learning and exercising our curiosity. So this is a very good thing. Being a forever learner is a wise way to live, as it is curiosity that keeps our mind active, opens up doors of opportunity to connect and socially stay involved, as well as feed well our being and sense of productivity, regardless of our age. Just as we talked about in the last episode 393, regarding rewiring our minds, it is possible, but it will take conscious effort, regular and consistent repetition, thus determination. But we are all the better for it if we do so. Consciously examine what skills you need to learn. Some may take quite a bit of time, but that is part of this long game approach. And it all begins with a single step, followed by the next step, the next, and so on and so forth. Now explore where and how you can learn that skill from a trusted expert that will ensure you do gain the quality learning experience that you need to acquire that skill. Invest in the class, enroll in the program, carve out the necessary time. Remember, you are prioritizing what is needed to create your ideal life that honors your priorities. Here's an example from my own life, and I've talked about it a little bit before, but maybe not as in depth. So part of my own journey has been to learn the French language well enough so that someday, and I do have a specific, and that's the other part of this, you want specific deadlines for the big projects. You don't want it to say someday, but you do, even though if it's a long-term one, you do want to set a specific timeline. That is something they talk about in the book by Doris Clark. But for just general conversation, I do have a deadline when I want to have learned or reached a certain level of the French proficiency. And the reason I want to do this is that I do want to be able to visit and stay in France part-time throughout each year, in the countryside, not in Paris. I mean, I love visiting Paris, but I sincerely prefer staying out in the countryside in the smaller villages and exploring walks and whatnot out in the countryside. Surprise, surprise. If you know me, that's not going to surprise you at all. But I knew that this would be a multi-year learning process to acquire that skill. But to me, it was worth it both in money and time, and so I'm sticking with it. That skill, the French language, was what I knew I was deficient in, and also knew that it had to be part of my eventually feeling confident enough to fulfill my intention of visiting France for long durations. I knew that that's scary enough as it is in many ways. But if I didn't have the language, I knew it would be even scarier, and I would get in my own way and say, no, you shouldn't do that. No. But if I have the language, I have less of an excuse. And it was something I had the power to change. So that's what I want you to be doing right now. I want you to be examining your ideal lifestyle and saying, okay, what is the skill that's lacking, that I'm deficient in? That is not a weakness. Your awareness is your strength. And it will only benefit you to be honest about, okay, I can get stronger in this. Choose just one, especially if it's going to take a lot of time. Be very thoughtful about how many, or if you do choose more than one, what type of investment, time, and energy they require. Because you want to not be exhausted and then have to put one aside or maybe both aside or whatever it is you've chosen. So just be conscientious, quality over quantity, choose the most important one, really get that one established, and maybe start the second one. Okay, that's number 3. Audit your bank of knowledge and pinpoint an area of strength. All right, now I have 3 more constructs of this foundation I want to share with you. But first, here is the sponsor for today's episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Indeed is driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly users, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work and use Indeed instead for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agreed that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. As someone who works for themselves, I still need to hire freelance contractors, and Indeed helps me find experts in their fields, which saves me time because I find the right fit right out of the gate. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. As a Simple Sophisticate listener, get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/simple. Just go to Indeed.com/simple right now and support the Simple Sophisticate podcast by saying you heard about Indeed on this show. Indeed.com/simple. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Welcome back. Let's dive in to number 4, which is design an everyday life you love because that is where you will reside most of your days. Quote, in the land of the quick fix, it may seem radical, but to learn anything significant, to make any lasting change in yourself, you must be willing to spend most of your time on the plateau, to keep practicing or working, even when it seems you are getting nowhere. End quote. This is from George Leonard, who is an Aikido master, and this quote was found in the Long Game book. So, at the core of living a simply luxurious life is designing every days that you love to live, and knowing what that looks like as life is always changing. And this will be unique to each of us, as we've talked about many, many times on the blog, on the podcast, in the books, so on and so forth. And the reality of life with regards to whether or not you're pursuing change, growth, a goal, or maybe you're not. Either way, most of our life is spent in the everydays. Okay. It is our mindset as to how we approach these everydays that will determine their value. So when we shift how we view our everydays and begin to value and see all that they have to offer when we live consciously, savoring all that is contained within them, we begin to thoroughly enjoy waking up each morning, whether it is the beginning of the work week or the start of a weekend. Why? Because we have taken responsibility for the life we are living. We make difficult choices about the work we do, where we live, how we live, who we spend and share our time with, how we engage, how we care for ourselves, etc. This list of what comprises our daily lives and how to elevate our daily lives has always been and will continue to be the focus of the Simply Luxurious Life destination, whether it's this podcast or the blog or the books. And so, however or wherever you're wanting to amplify, improve, increase, add something, take away, understand what's not necessary, it's all here as reference to you. So simply search the archives, type in that word, whatever that search word is. You're trying to maybe simplify something. Maybe you're trying to understand something about relationships. Maybe you're trying to understand something about money. That's all covered here. The key thing is that you design every days that you love, that bring you to life, that energize you, that align with your priorities, but at the same time, because you're going to reside in these every days, the majority of your life, you want to make them awesome. And you can absolutely do that. So I've included a few posts to get you started on how to focus on what you can that will change the quality of your everydays and thus enable you to not only enjoy the journey toward the outcome you're trying to attain, but eventually arrive with patience at the place that you have intended. So I have, these are all favorite posts too, that have been shared just in the last couple of years. The first one is how to tune up your everyday. So 8 everyday life items to invest in for an awesome day. That one's a very concrete post. And then I have one titled 20 Simple Luxuries to Welcome into Your Everyday. And lastly, I have the long game and why designing our everydays thoughtfully makes the journey a joy and our desired success most certain. So that one really ties into what we're talking about here. And that was shared last January. So you can find all those on the show notes for this episode, the simplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast 394. So that's number 4. Design an everyday life you love because that is where you will reside most of your days. Number 5, become an expert in the skill of savoring and appreciation. So Clark talks about the phenomenon of, quote, shifting baseline syndrome, end quote. It's an ecological term, but it can apply to our own life journey as well. Essentially, what it is that we end up forgetting what our old life used to look and feel like. In other words, we forget that much of what we have or how we are living now are details and dreams we had earlier in our lives ached to be able to experience. Part of this phenomenon has to do with the lack of awareness, and another part has to do with undervaluing appreciation and instead being or getting into the habit of always wanting. Even after we've attained what we initially wanted, we want then something else instead of appreciating all that is. So it's not a bad thing to desire to improve and to grow. We're not saying that. But when we take for granted what we have, we relinquish a powerful boost of life enjoyment, and thus contentment erodes. So instead, take a moment to reflect on something that when you see it or hear it or walk by it or drive by it on your commute, you are prompted to recall your old life and how far you have now come along your journey. I am confident that you have journeyed far toward your goals and have accomplished much already. And that's part of the reason you're probably setting another goal or revolution or resolution or intention for this new year is because you know you can do it. You've seen it. You've done it. In some small or large way, you've done it. But we don't want to forget we don't want to linger in the past, but we don't want to forget where we once were, right? That actually has a powerful fuel to deepen our enjoyment of where we are now as we persistently step forward toward our next whatever it might be. This doesn't have to be a negative thing from our past. It simply is a chapter of your life that is now closed and you have moved forward into something more fulfilling and enriching. And when you take this moment to reflect, give a nod of gratitude to appreciate all that you did and where you are now. And instead of wishing for more in this moment, savor what you have instead. Extend gratitude for all that nourishes what you are now able to do that once in your past you would have only dreamed about. So just become this expert in savoring and appreciation. I just want to add a quick note here. In the Simply Luxurious Life's Contentment Masterclass, both of these skills, savoring and appreciation, are explored, taught, and practiced. You will individually put them into practice as it applies to your life because these two skills are at the core of living a life of true contentment every single day. And I provide a link to learn more about the class. You can look at the detailed syllabus. You can check out reviews of readers who've enrolled and finished the course. That's all on the show notes, or you can just simply go to classes in the menu bar of the blog to learn more about the course. So that's number 5, become an expert in savoring and appreciation. Last but not least, number 6. So you have your priorities. You have created a life you love living every day. You have created times of oasis. You are practicing appreciation regularly. It's becoming a habit, and savoring as well. Okay, so now you're still not there yet, and it'll take some time. So what do you need to do to strengthen this foundation even more? Set the intention to be resilient. Quote, becoming a long-term thinker requires a substratum of resilience because it's rare that anything works out the first time or in the way you envisioned it, end quote. At the foundation of residing in a quiet confidence that we will reach the long-term outcome that we have set for ourselves is resilience. Things will twist and turn. Rejection will happen, likely more than once. Delays are inevitable, but with clarity about what we value and how we want to live our life, knowing our inner compass and what energizes us, we will be able to weather these temporary setbacks and momentary lulls with self-assurance that staying this course we have chosen to be on will eventually lead us to where we set out to arrive. So 2 years ago, I believe it was 2 years ago, I've included the post in the show notes. The post explored the concept of letting go of setting resolutions and instead setting intentions. And instead of accomplishing something, to being something. So I will be, add an adjective or an adverb. I will be patient. I will be kind. I will be whatever it is, full of gratitude. I will be courageous. I mean, anything. But in saying all that, if you are setting a long-term goal or outcome that you want to bring to fruition, make sure one of your intentions is to be resilient, which I think embodies a lot of adjectives that we just mentioned there. Being resilient does require you to be patient. It requires you to be brave. It requires you to be quietly trusting of yourself. It requires you to be kind to yourself, not beat yourself up, right? It requires you to not blame, right? To because things are not going to happen the way you want them to. Okay, well, what can I learn from this? All right. So to be self-exploratory or to look for the lesson. Anyway, so set the intention to be resilient. And it was funny because I was just starting to, well, I'm actually maybe halfway through now, the memoir written by Barefoot Contessa at the moment, Be Ready When the Luck Happens. And one of the things that she talks about is part of the reason she thinks she has been successful in her life, the way she has defined success for herself, is that she has been okay being uncomfortable for durations. And hasn't sat on the sidelines. When an opportunity presented itself or she thought of an idea to do something, she was willing to dive in, even though it took time for things to materialize or for things to come to completion, whatever it might be. And of course, those times, if they're big projects or big ideas, it can be uncomfortable, unsettling, a lot of moving parts, things change along the way. So maybe that might be something, especially if you're at the start of your journey, or maybe if you're still in the middle and there's a long duration to go through, to accept that you need to be able to find comfort in being uncomfortable or on not knowing for this temporary moment in time. But only you know what your journey is as far as, what your ideal life is and what you're striving for. So along the way, it's important to have every day that nourish you, that lift your day up even more, so that you can be energized and rejuvenated to keep going forward. All right. So those are the 6 components of the foundation for an extraordinary year and beyond to materialize. Whether your vision of what will transpire in this new year has to do with your health or your career, your personal life, or your travel dreams, each of the steps or the components of the foundation that were shared today will provide the foundation of assurance that if you persist, all the while staying present in your everydays, savoring them fully and consciously, At some point in the future, maybe not in this new year, maybe in 2 or 3, or maybe in 10 years' time. Hello, as I was just saying, I set my vision journal, put it together in 2010, and it's 2025. We're almost there. Not quite, but we're getting close. And a lot of things have materialized. There's always small components along the way that you celebrate. You will. I am confident of this. You will meet with success what you set to bring to pass. Now, if you check out the show notes, I've included 2 pictures, one at the beginning and one at the end. And as I talked about at the beginning of this episode, we talked about winter and how the seasons have purpose. And this is, we find ourselves, most of us find ourselves, because we live in the Northern Hemisphere, most of us, not all of us, but you can absolutely begin this journey at any seasonal point. But the idea is winter does have a lot of value. But don't ask winter, the literal concept of winter or the conceptual concept of winter. Don't ask this time of year, getting prepared and clear-eyed about where you're going, to be anything more than it can be. You won't reside there forever, but it helps you to gather up your information of clarification so you can proceed forward into the next season. So I have this picture of a winterscape here in Bend. I captured it a couple years ago. Anyway, there is beauty in each season. And then at the end, we arrive at Claude Monet's Giverny, in the trellis, flower-draped trellis with the nasturtiums streaming down the pathway. Growth, blossoming can happen, will happen. Just reside in resilience. Savor your everydays. Set your compass, and you'll get there. All right. I'm so grateful that you tuned in today. I know you're going to have a great start to the new year and throughout the rest of the new year. And in between, now and then, I have a book you might want to read, and that's our Petit Plaisir. Now, if you're looking for even more inspiration, before I get to today's Petit Plaisir, I've included 4 posts about starting the new year well, various approaches. So last year we talked about 20 ways to live simply and fully, how to make space for your New Year's intentions to materialize, and we talk about the difference between intentions and resolutions. We also talk about this idea of creating a clear space. So literally just getting yourself simplified and organized, whether it's your files, whether it's your fridge. So those kind of things. If you're looking for really concrete actions to take, that's a post for you to read. And then also just the encouragement to take a breath. Take a breath. After the bustle of the holidays, take a breath if you can, for however long you can. All right, I'll be back with this week's Petit Plaisir, which I think might be just the right read to savor during the time between the years. So this episode's Petit Plaisir is a novel by British author and screenplay writer David Nicholls, titled You Are Here. The novel is set in the northwest and northeastern English countryside, along the rambling trails and hiking throughways. And after reading this book, you too might be inspired to take a multi-day trek in the wilderness with friends and acquaintances. Now, you may know David Nicholls if you've read his books. You may know that he wrote a wildly successful novel titled One Day, and it was published back in 2009, so about 15 years ago. And it was turned into a movie in 2011 starring Anne Hathaway and Jim Sturgis. And then actually this past year, it was turned into a TV series on Netflix, same title. And he really is, Nicholls has become known for being the master of romantic modern day dialogue and storytelling. And with this new novel, You Are Here, he has returned with arguably a more endearing and even more relatable, in my opinion, romantic storyline. And this time it's entirely set in England. Okay. Set along the trails running through Cumbria, North Pennines, and the North York Moors, the hike begins at St. Bees on the northwest side of England along the Atlantic coast, with the end of the route for one of the characters, Michael, who is keen to walk the entire width of the country on this famous route that consists of about 190 miles, which was devised by Alfred Wainwright, which will lead him to the North Sea, arriving at Robin Hood's Bay Beach in Whitby, Yorkshire. Marnie is the unexpected love match by their mutual friend Cleo. And Marnie is planning on just hiking for 3 days along with everyone else. And there are 5 people that are hiking. Before I go any further into the plot, I've included a map, a Google map of their route. So you can see on the map where they start and how, and just the width of the countryside and which countryside and national landscapes they're going through. It's not a guidebook because the author freely admits that the hotels or the hostels or the accommodations, bed and breakfasts, and whatnot, they're all fictitious, although the towns are not. And what I love about this is because, as you know, many of you know, I was hiking in the Lake District last year during a very rainy season, which, as you'll see in the book, they too hike through a very rainy day or two, and it is... it provides a lot of entertainment. Anyway, what is beautiful about this book and the locales that he chooses is the towns exist, the villages exist, but the names of the places that they stay to sleep or eat are fictitious. But he does allude to places that if you've hiked through these places, you know about them. So, for example, he doesn't directly mention Sarah Nelson's gingerbread cottage, where you can pick up the most delicious gingerbread ever. But he does allude to it as the hiking duo, Marnie and Michael, arrive in Grasmere for a respite and pop into a Petite cottage for a treat. So while you won't want to use this book as a precise and exact guide, let it inspire you to get outdoors into the Lake District and beyond. These really are special routes of exploration and discovery. Okay, so tangentially, Marnie and Michael have known each other for about 13 years, as they are the godparents of Cleo's now teenage son, Anthony. Marnie hails from London and met Cleo years ago in an earlier career, and Michael teaches geography in the same school as Cleo, who is now the deputy head of the school located in York. Age 37 and 41, both Marnie and Michael respectively are divorced and separated. Each have their relationship traumas that gradually are shared either along the trail or in first-person dialogue of each character as the novel rotates back and forth with each chapter's narration of the story. With short chapters, some just 2 pages long, once the hike begins, it is only when the 2 are the remaining 2 hikers, because as I mentioned, it begins with 5, that the chapters stretch in length. So only in the middle of the novel do these chapters get a little bit lengthier, because this is the deepening of the connection of Marnie and Michael as they share more and more about themselves. And it's primarily just dialogue. It's beautiful dialogue. It's quick, it's snappy. It just seems very natural. David Nichols really has a knack for this. But they really aren't, at this point, do not have the intention of anything more. They're just trekking. They're just hiking. They're just trying to get to the next destination. And they're gradually starting to enjoy each other more and more. So with that quick and snappy dialogue, you read it so fast, and before you know it, they've arrived at the next rest stop at the end of their day hike, and they're looking for their meal, their shower, and a good night's sleep. Of course, because I mentioned this is a love story or romantic story, the 2 hikers realize their interest for one another at different moments, which leads me to guess that this will become a feature film at some point down the road, and I most definitely would love to watch it. If nothing else, viewing this film when it comes to be will be a treat to see the beauty of the Lake District after having seen it with my own eyes. Some of the trails, obviously just one. I was just there for one day hike. And seeing them during rain-soaked conditions. It's still a beautiful place when it's raining. It's gorgeous. It's amazing. And during the first 2 days of the hike in the novel, they are sledging through some really rainy conditions. If you want to take a look at my hike and the video that I captured with all the rain, I'll provide a link on the show notes. But also to see the characters come to life on the screen, even more so than they already do on the pages. They really do come to seem to be real as you read them. They're so well constructed. So without spoiling the ending, the novel does conclude in London. So Marnie actually lives in London. Michael, as we mentioned, lives in York. And while the countryside shines, and it's predominantly the main character here, so too does the city in the limited moments we spend time there. It is a lengthy novel, more than 340 pages, but once you start reading, you do not want to put it down. And I, as I mentioned, was through it in a weekend. It's a wonderful book to pick up and enjoy during the holiday respite that's about to arrive. That is between the years, the week between the years. Even though this book is set during the long 2-week holiday for Easter in England, because that's when the teachers have off, the plans are made during New Year's by their friend Cleo. So perhaps this book will inspire your own plans to get out and explore. I've included a link to the book. And again, as I mentioned, you can see the map of where they hike. It's a delightful read. I really think you'll enjoy it. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Petite Plaisir, where each episode, ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable. Tune in at the end of each episode where I'll recommend a book, a film, a show, a recipe, anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. Thank you so much for joining me as we conclude 2024, but also look ahead to what I know can be an absolutely awesome and amazing new year. And before I forget, if you've ever considered becoming a top tier member, now is the time to sign up because prices will go up on January 1st, and you want to lock in your savings as you can hold on to your rate, the rate you have, whatever it is. And I have some people that began 4 or 5 years ago that are still paying a super, super low rate for their top tier membership because they kept their membership active. So it does include the ability to pause whenever you need to pause your payment. But if you've ever wanted to become a top tier member, we have some exciting things coming up in the new year. As you know, the Simply Luxurious Life is traveling to Paris and to France and the countryside as well. There is going to be a primary bedroom reveal tour the first Saturday of January. And of course, we have French and British Week, the 10th anniversary French Week, and soon the 4th book will be released. So we'll be releasing now in 2026, but as you know, the top tier members receive a special gift when that goes into pre-order. So just consider exploring top tier membership and check out the prices and sign up before January 1st arrives. You can view all the benefits of becoming a top tier member at thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/member. A brand new episode kicks off the new year on Wednesday, January 1st. I do hope you'll join me. Wishing you a wonderful week between New Year's and a happy new year. Bonne journée. Thank you for tuning in to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, visit the blog, The Simply Luxurious Life, with the shortened URL tsll.co or thesimplyluxuriouslife.com. For more in-depth exploration of how to cultivate your own unique, simply luxurious life, pick up my new book, which became both a bestseller and #1 new release in France Travel, The Road to Le Papillon, Daily Meditations on True Contentment. Available in all 4 formats for your preferred reading or listening. My first book, titled Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, and my second book, Living the Simply Luxurious Life, are also available in each of the 4 formats. Readers can now join the more intimate The Simply Luxurious Life international community by becoming members of the blog, which offers the benefits of ad-free reading site-wide, unlimited access and exclusive access to content on the blog, such as the monthly A Cup of Moments with Shannon video chat, tours of my home Le Papillon, the monthly What Made Me Smile post, and monthly Ponderings post, as well as the exclusive opportunity to enter all of the giveaways during the annual French and British weeks. To stay caught up on all things Simply Luxurious, the podcast, blog post, the cooking show, and receive exclusive news, as well as an extra dose of inspiration to jumpstart each new month, subscribe to the Simply Luxurious Life's free monthly newsletter, arriving on the last day of each month in your inbox. There is also a weekly newsletter, which is also free, and arrives each Friday to keep you caught up on the recent weekly posts on the blog. Enjoy with a hot cuppa or cup of morning coffee, and stay in the know about all things simply luxurious. Look for 2 new episodes of this podcast on the 1st and 3rd Wednesday of each month. And until next time, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Thank you for tuning in. Bonne journée.